Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Safety Justice League podcast. And we are here with someone I found on Twitter. So sometimes Twitter leads,
You
to
said
some
it
great
was such
connections.
it was almost like disappointment. It
I
was
know.
like somebody I found on Twitter.
Somebody I found on Twitter.
I do feel like a lot of people in our field, they only use Twitter when they're trying to win contests during a conference and that they don't want to take it seriously.
Jason just showed me how to use it. So
Oh.
I suck
Well,
at Twitter.
The possibilities are endless now. I mean,
Uh,
I love Twitter. I always say it's my favorite platform. So I don't even remember what the thread was that I was commenting on or just observing. And Deri might not either, but our guest here is Deri Latimer. And I met her in a Twitter thread and thought, this person is cool. And I clicked on her profile and thought, wow, she'd be really interesting on the podcast. And so we made it happen. So, Deri, I would love for you to introduce yourself in superhero origin story fashion to the
Before you
audience.
do that, just
Oh.
in case anybody is watching this, yes, I just did cough in my water and spray it into my eyeball. So sorry.
Perfect.
Continue.
You have to interact with the whole show.
I thought you did.
So,
Yes.
in the 1960s, small northern community, a young child was born. And that child grew to be a happy, a person who really just wanted to please others, to be the funny girl in school, to be the person whose parents were proud of her. And tragedy struck, as it does. And with each tragedy, this girl turned that into an opportunity to help herself as well as others. And finally, in her 60th, yes, that's right, 60th year on the planet, something happened that allowed her to transform superpowers she didn't even know were possible. And she finds herself now at a place where she's got a whole new message to add to the already really important one that she's been spewing, sharing for the last 25 years or more.
Nice.
That's
We're going to talk to her next week.
Deri tells the most amazing stories about Katie Kennewick. No, I'm just kidding. Deri, that was an amazing origin story. I don't think we've gone back to birth with someone one time, but I don't think that he was as well versed as you were in the origin. I love it.
We definitely, and you gave me one of the earliest light bulbs for a lightning round question I think I've ever had. But I don't think we've ever gone back in time to the 60s before. So that was fun. I got a little psychedelic there with you.
I know I'm a little seasoned for the demographic of your podcast, but
So is Jason, but that's okay.
but I'm ready.
Awesome. Yeah, we're stoked to have you. I'm guessing I know what the trauma was of the past year, but we'll get to that. So the reason I was so interested in speaking to you was about that psychological well-being aspect of what you do. And so right now, I mean, this podcast is geared towards safety professionals who are often pulled in many different directions or expected to do many different things. And now mental health and well-being is thrown into all that. And most of us, like, we're hanging on by a thread because we're safety professionals. So what are we supposed to do with that?
So I first of all, I think the people following your podcast in the professions that you've chosen is such an important profession. I agree with you totally. I think it has transformed in the last at least decade, for sure, where psychological well-being, mental health at work has almost surpassed the importance of safety shoes, right? Like it has become, it's become the area that you need to that you need to be focusing your efforts. And my journey, what I left out of this too. So I said there were many traumas, as there are for all of us through our lives. And a significant one for me was just after I graduated high school. I was living in the frigid northern Manitoba community still. And my father died of a heart attack at 45 years old. And that, of course, caused a significant wake up moment for my mother and her 3 children, or 4 children. That one who was married, the rest of us were still highly dependent on her. Um, to sort of go, whoa, I mean, dad kind of did it all, right? He brought in the cash. He was sort of the person who organized everything. However, in that moment, what I remember is I got a job at the mine where my dad had been an executive. I decided to stay up north and help my mom. And I just remember thinking at the time that there were a lot of people who were really unhappy at work. So people were coming into work almost, kind of like, oh, get through the day. And I just thought, that's weird. Like, why would people do something that they couldn't wait for it to be over? But in addition to that, I learned, I should say, I didn't know immediately that my father died from overwork. He was one of those classic examples. So he died in 1978 of a massive coronary, and he was the classic dude who worked 24/7, because that was what was expected, or at least he certainly believed that's what was expected. And although I think it's much better today, I think there's still a lot of those elements in our culture of people putting their work before themselves, before their well-being. So I had this moment very early in my life. That's why I went to university and decided I was going to study human resources, and I was going to try to change the world. Of course, I was going to make it a better place. Like, people shouldn't die from stress
No.
and shouldn't die from working. And so that's when I set off. And so I did it, as I mentioned to you earlier. I did work with lots of health and safety professionals like all of you. And again, back in those days, stress wasn't even on the agenda,
No.
right? For health and safety. Wasn't even on the
No,
topic
it
of
was how long
conversation.
you were gonna warm your chair. I mean, and I remember that. I think the 3 of us were sort of transitional, and we are transitional in terms of our generation, uh, status, just being right in the middle of everything. And there was still, I remember starting out, 20 years ago, and hearing that you're expected to be at work 60 hours a week, and you need to do this, and you better clock in, and you better tell me if you know, and on salary even. And I think that is getting a little better, but it's still very much there. And I even up until a couple of years ago really felt guilty if I did anything but what all these preconceived ideas of how long I had to sit there and all this other stuff. So it's still a problem for sure.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Especially the industries that a lot of us work in, super heavy, dirty job type of industries where, construction, Deri mentioned mining and, heavy manufacturing. And it's really like this badge of honor in a dumb way of, how many hours people put in or how hard, they just like killed it. And I don't know. I have a lot to say on that because I've thought recently about how if I was suddenly in my first job right now, I could not do that first job the way that I did it back then, which is
Oh, no
good,
way.
but, like, the time, it's just
Yeah.
things have changed. So I like that
Yeah.
transitional comment you made. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool. And so I wanted to point out a couple of things that I think just relate to to all of us, but really to your profession. So after I graduated, this is the trauma that was triggered in 2020. This trauma happened 33 years ago, just after I graduated from university. So again, my father's passed away. I go to university. I'm going to change the world, right? I'm going to, create stress-free workplaces. Yeah. So met a beautiful man. I got married, and 8 months into our marriage, he died by suicide.
Oh,
And again,
wow.
I thought, what? Just like with my father, like, what is happening? I had no idea. None of us knew there was anything of concern. And so I became more determined, right? More determined to do what I could to help all of us understand that there are things going on in people's minds, even though on the outside they look perfectly fine. Um, and so really that's where I've dedicated my speaking. So how does that relate to health and safety professionals? Let me tell you this quick story. I'm a speaker. I speak at conferences. I'm a keynoter. I depend on the AV crew, right? There's a crew that
Mhm.
comes in that looks after all the audio, video, all the equipment I need to
They
do what I
set up
do
your
for
snowball for you?
corporations. Yeah, they do better job than I do, let me tell you. And this was not long ago. This was in 2019. I met with the AV person, a young gentleman, ahead of time. We had because I always like to have the eyeball to eyeball, like, are we in sync? You know what I need? Because I play music, you got to make sure the music is working, blah, blah, blah. At one point in my keynote, and I do keynotes, which means they're an hour. I don't have like extra time to just go, okay, people talk, I'll be back in a minute, right?
Yeah.
I got to keep going. And I looked over, and this young gentleman was asleep. My music didn't play, and he was sleeping.
Oh,
I got through the moment. There was a crowd of 500 people in the room. I had to carry on, right? And I did. We made it. It was good. At the end, I went up and I said, his name wasn't Dude, but I'll just call him. I was like, Dude, what what is going on?
You can
You
call
know,
him
we
what you
had
really
this,
called him. We would, but
yeah. And he said, please don't tell anyone. Don't tell my boss. I have insomnia.
oh,
I haven't slept in 7 days. And I'm trying to fix it. And I don't know how to fix it.
wow.
wow.
So I thought about that young man. For first of all, I spoke with him and helped him to get in touch with some resources, but I thought about him so much because he, to me, is walking around every workplace right now. There are many of
Mhm.
him
Yep.
walking around because I wouldn't have known by looking at him. And
And
he
we're almost
was
told
so
not to ask, right? I mean, you just, "Oh, that's not any of my business."
well, and you know what, Jason? I hope if I do anything on this podcast, that I encourage you to please ask and
Yeah,
approach
absolutely.
it as a place of caring and curiosity. That's it. You are just a person who cares, who pays attention. You
Yeah.
notice something, or you're wondering or about somebody maybe who's been late for work a couple of days, or you notice something small. Even just be caring and curious with
Mhm.
that person. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? You know, how are anything you want to talk about that I
Yeah.
and this doesn't mean that you are now counselors, right? That's not what this means. What this means is you have an opportunity to hook people up with resources. And many of you, I bet, work for organizations that have employee assistance programs. You live in communities, yeah, right, that have mental health resources available. That's really all you need to do is keep your eyes open and your ears open. Be the kind of person that others know they could come to. But when you approach them, just be there with caring and curiosity, just to because you might save a life in that moment by just that one conversation. You
So
might save
we're
a life.
So, what are some of the good signs? I mean, you're saying try to be observant, make sure we're keeping an eye on our folks. What I mean, I know there's the tardiness, and there's some just overall just different. I mean, there's some that are really apparent that somebody's going through stuff. But what are some of those hidden ones? What are the ones that aren't quite as noticeable that we should be looking out for our employees with? I mean, what are some of those?
Uh, so you're right, absolutely, Jason. So some of them are for sure those things that you might notice. Suddenly the person's not as put together, right? Like you're not sure a shower has happened in a while. You know, you might notice things like that that seem subtle. Like they still show up, they still talk at meetings, but yet they seem a little unkept, compared to normal. So anything that seems out of what you've come to know to be normal for them, for that person, could be a sign.
Right.
Here's an example. I do consulting with organizations where I meet with the executive. And so I don't know a lot of the, like intimately, a lot of the people who are, for example, working in the warehouse, right? I might have met the person once. And I actually just was on site with a client because we're all just coming back on site. And I'm so excited to be able to go see. So I was wandering around and I came upon a new employee they had hired over during COVID, young individual, 20 years old. I didn't know him, but I looked at him and he had a mask on, I had a mask on. And in his eyes, I saw something. Now you might say, well, Deri, that's all good and like that. All I can tell you, Jason, because I think you, like Abby and like Jason, the other Jason,
Other Jason.
all of us notice subtle things in people's eyes. Just a flicker, I again, it's not science, right? It's kind of
Intuition, kind of.
intuition.
Yeah.
So I asked him to, because we could go take our masks off outside. I said, hey, I haven't spent time with you. Do you want to come outside? And in that we just were, getting to know each other a bit. And I was just telling him about my experience with this company, and he shared some things with me. He ended up actually resigning, which I think was the right thing for this young man, because he was in not a very good place at all. So I think trust yourself and know that if you approach someone and you say, hey, want to go grab some time outside, and if something inside of you is just saying, I think there's something up here, it's okay to say, hey, Bob or Sally, I just feel like I'm noticing something. I can't put my finger on it, and I could be wrong. Please tell me. I'm just wondering how you're doing.
Mhm.
And if you say that to anyone, and if they go, like, hey, there's no, well, you've lost nothing, right?
Right.
But if they give you something like, oh, yeah," and they might actually say no, which I've found has
Yeah.
happened with me, and then later they'll come back and go, yeah, um, yeah, I'm not doing so well.
Yeah, but you've already made it
You've
known
you've opened
that
the door a little
you're
bit.
you're a
Yeah.
safe person, that it's like they know that you picked it up, and but
Yeah.
that you weren't pushing, for more information. It's
I
like, without even saying it, it's like
Exactly.
you can come to me when you're
Right.
ready.
And
So
my
I
my
like that.
instinct is totally to push and push and push. And I actually had that happen. It was pretty incredible because a couple of weeks ago, having a fairly serious conversation, was talking to the person. I was like, hey, are you okay? You're like, is everything cool? And they're like, yeah, yeah, I'm good. And totally wasn't. But I just backed off, which is not my normal. I'm like, okay, well, I'll leave it. And then a couple hours later, it was like, hey, I need to talk about it. So
Yeah.
Back at pictures of myself in a year, a span of time where I was struggling,
mhm.
and I'm smiling the same smile. I'm hugging the same hugs. I'm saying the same things. But if I look at those pictures, I can see in my eyes that the smile wasn't real. I can see in my eyes that I was struggling with something. And so I'll do a self check. Sometimes I'm like, I think I'm fine, but let me take a look at these pictures and make sure my eyes look.
Get a
Am I
selfie and be
good?
like, oh,
Yeah, I think I'm good. Okay, but I think I agree. Even with masks, there's something about the eyes being a window to the soul to really see where somebody's struggling.
Yeah, I love that, Jason. Both of you, I think that's so important. And I think, as Jason, blue shirt Jason, is that what I can call you? Blue
JM.
shirt Jason.
You just
You
JM is
said
fine. Yeah.
sometimes you push a bit, like you're like, hey, no, really. And I would imagine those are people really well. So you
Oh
kind
yeah.
of go, wait a minute. Yeah. Like I've done that with friends of mine,
Mhm.
who kind of brush me off. I go, wait a minute, I'll take their hand sometimes and say,
Yeah.
I'm not sure you are. And I'm going to sit here because I'm really I care and I'm really concerned. And whereas, let's say with this young man I was just describing to you, I didn't know him, right? I
Right.
don't have markers. I don't know him, but yet I could still open a door. And I think as a health and safety professional, you have this very unique and I think wonderful opportunity to look at the whole person in the organization, because health and safety is much more than whether or not the person has the equipment and has been trained for the job, right? Because if this is not okay, if this is not fully engaged, all the rest of that is, doesn't mean a lot, right? So to look at ways to develop those skills in yourself, continue to develop them, and also to let people know that you work with that is a part of your role. And again, you're not there as a counselor, right? Like, that's not our role. We're not there. But what we can do is help people find a track, find a resource, find a person um, outside of ourselves. And I remember hearing, one of the stories that stuck with me early in my career was working with a leader. I was coaching this leader at this point in time, and this leader, he was very concerned about a male that reported to him, and he didn't know how to approach him, but he really thought that something bad could happen, that this person might take their life. He just felt very that things were dark for this person. And so we talked about the importance. And as you probably know, and I don't know if any of you have ever taken, there's a mental health first aid course, and
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of training that you can take if you haven't. But that even there may be a point where it's important that you ask that question. Are you considering hurting yourself or others? And now that seems like a really hard question to ask, and you're not going to open with that one generally, right? But if you're getting some signals, if you've talked to this person and you're really starting to, like Jason Whiteshirt, Jason, you asked earlier, what are those other subtle signs? It is things like the eyes. It is things like the person is suddenly not going for coffee with people, or not engaging in the after the Zoom call conversation. It'll be little tiny things
Yeah.
that you'll start to say to yourself, this is not like so and so, right? Like, this is, yeah. And that's the time.
I grabbed a book, speaking of eyes, I grabbed the book Blink, and so for a
Love
couple of
it.
reasons. One, it's just a really good book, and two, I think safety professionals and just we're all at work probably more than with family or friends, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so we can pick up on those little things. And so Blink is all about, like, you have experience, knowledge, and expertise where you can make that quick assessment. And so we need to, I think you said trust, trust yourself that you're picking up on something and then approaching with the
Mhm.
the curiosity, I think, is the key. But I think a lot of our fellow safety professionals may not trust their instincts
Yeah.
or
Mm,
try to talk themselves out of seeing what they're really seeing. So I would
yeah.
encourage people to not do that.
I'm kind of feeling like there's an overarching resource kind of theme about this episode. So we would be remiss if we didn't provide our own resources to you guys listening. So let's do it right now. We're gonna have a party. It is the step up safety moment. You know what it is by now. In the past, we were remiss. We didn't provide enough resources for you, and we want to give you that technical content. I'm going to provide something a little bit different, spice it up a little bit today. This is from a proposed regulation, so figure it out. Tell us in the comments. This proposal will result in cost savings for affected employers, and those savings fall below levels that could be said to have a significant positive economic impact on substantial number of small entities. Therefore, OSHA certifies that this proposed standard would not have an impact, would not have a significant impact on a substantial number of small entities. And there you have it.
Wow.
What?
Just wow. Speaking of things that have been written, a little birdie told me that there might be a book coming out soon written by one of the 4 authors on this screen right now,
Not
and
me.
I don't have a new book coming out. Abby, do you have another one coming out?
I just wrote one. No.
Okay, Jason, what do you got?
I'm way back there. I haven't written one in a
Okay,
couple
all
years.
right. So I'm guessing it's you, Deri. Do you have a new book
Yeah,
coming out?
I
Tell us about that.
do. Thank you for asking. Yes, it's called Not Crazy, Just Human. And it is, the subtitle is Moving Through Trauma to Healing. So I gave you a little hint that I had a trauma triggered in March of 2020, but it wasn't the pandemic. It was a 33-year-old trauma. And I didn't know what was wrong with me for 9 months of last year, except I was very, very, very sick. In fact, I was half my body size. I was not sleeping. I could not think. So I know it makes you want to run out and buy that book, doesn't it? But let me tell you, the book is all about hope and all about healing because I found a therapy modality called EMDR. Stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Don't worry, don't memorize it. It doesn't matter. Except it
I
was a
already forgot.
way. I know. It was a way for me to go back and reprocess some memories, and it saved my life.
That's
And I,
awesome.
in middle of May this year, um, was reborn. Really. So this book is absolutely a message of hope and healing, and in it are a whole bunch of strategies. Like here, can I share a couple with you? Can I just share a couple? There's
Please,
a whole
please
bunch.
do.
There's
I mean,
like
it sounds like we had the same year last year, so I want to read this thing. But yes, please share.
Okay, good. So here's a couple things because this applies to every human. I think all of us might fall in that category at some point. So here's a couple of things. You all know, we all know, because we've heard it a cajillion times on every course we've been on anything we've read about well-being, that practices such as presence, mindfulness, meditation are important, right? We've all heard it. I want to remind you, do not ignore the wisdom in those messages. I had a practice of mindfulness prior to this happening to me. And thank goodness, even though I could not meditate when I was really sick, I was not functioning at all. But because I had the practice, when I started to get better, I could start those practices again. So here's a word of advice I have for all of us, myself included, is don't wait until you are not well to develop these practices, because you won't be able to. You can't develop these habits when you're unwell. Develop them when you're well, when you don't need them, in other words, right? Like, so a practice of meditation and mindfulness, I cannot underscore the importance of that. A practice of connecting with others. I mean, that's what we've talked about on this whole call, right? That our brains are absolutely social. Look what the pandemic did to all of us, right? No matter what, all of us experienced extreme isolation and probably a lot of really dark times, no matter what else was going on. Keep those practices of connecting with others up, like keep those strong. Your brain needs that. Your whole, everything about your well-being requires those connections, because you know, as do I, that when those are not strong, those bonds with other humans, we become unwell. And in fact, human beings cannot exist without social connection. So those are just a couple of practices. And realize I just tell a story in the book about how this trauma with my husband, who died after 8 months into our marriage, was connected to an experience I had as a child, a memory of being 6 years old. And so to know that all of us have a web, if you like, of memories, a web of life experiences, and stuff happened to us, and trauma is not about the event. It's about what happens inside of us because of the event. So the event doesn't have to be like this, wow, this like completely from the outside horrible thing. It could be anything. But trauma is about what we do inside of ourselves because of it. So the third thing I would say is know that you have had trauma and that's okay. And there's wisdom in that trauma. There is a pathway to a greater sense of who you are. So if you find yourself triggered, because you probably do and have found yourself to be triggered by, could be something somebody says randomly in a meeting, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't feel very good. That could be just a little whisper of something that you can reflect on. And that's what's beautiful about a practice of mindfulness is it can help you to open a little window into your story, because your story has value, as does all of ours. So just pay attention to those whispers.
I love that you mentioned little windows, because what's next? We're going to get an opportunity to get a little window into who Deri really is, because the next round is the lightning round, which means you're going to get 10 seconds or less to answer a question that we're going to ask you that may or may not have anything to do with anything you've talked about so far. Maestro, do we have a sound that will play?
We do, and it's but first I have to tell you, because you missed it. But if you didn't know, Maldonado means little window in Slavic.
It does. I've heard
like
that.
it.
Just so you know. Yeah.
Just
but yeah,
Slavic.
just like,
That's
really?
cool.
It
That is
doesn't really mean
cool.
that. It doesn't mean
Oh,
that.
okay.
Okay.
Not at
That
all.
would be cool if it did.
Yeah,
Okay.
listen to the rest of the shows. You'll find out all kinds of interesting stuff about my name. No, but in honor of everything that you've talked about, and I think this goes with the theme of the if you don't respond in time, you'll hear this.
Get to work.
Okay.
Work.
All right, who has the first lightning round question for tonight?
I got
Go for it, Jason
Okay.
Maldonado.
Ooh, got through it. Okay, so you were telling a story about growing up in a northern town, which put the song "Life in a Northern Town" into my head. Are you familiar with the song? Life
I
in a
don't know.
northern town. Nope. Okay,
Maybe.
well, you're gonna fail then. You have 10 seconds to sing the melody of "Life in a Northern Town."
Life is a highway.
Wow, that's not even close.
I know it's not that song. I
Get
just
to work.
did you know that Tom Cochran is from the same small town as me in northern Manitoba?
I was gonna say she just sang a Canadian
I know,
song
right?
just to
Yeah,
sing a
right,
Canadian song.
just
I
as
should
quick
get
as
a
she could.
point.
I'm pretty
I
sure
should
"Life
get
in
a
a Northern Town" is a Canadian. No, it's not. It's
No.
a English song.
No.
All right, Abby.
Okay, in our pre-show chat, you mentioned the word resilience, which I've said on this podcast, I don't really like that word. So, give me a statement or a few words of wisdom so that maybe I could reframe how I think about the word resilience.
Well, I would say think about resilience as having a spring in your step, a little bounce through life. What do you think? Is that good? No?
That's
No?
you got her about halfway there with
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one. You can tell
She's like,
by the look on her face.
I can
the
get
wheels
there
are
from
the
that.
wheels are turning.
They are.
You know what? It's so anyway, we won't get into it, but I agree with you, Abby. It's a bit overused, that term. I agree.
All right, so here's a question that has nothing to do with what you've talked about so far. What completely safe animal? I'm talking about no one should be scared of this animal at all. Are you inexplicably scared of?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I don't know. Here's what popped into my mind. I'm really afraid of dogs, like big dogs. I have a thing. If they run out at the lake, I scream. Yeah.
Don't go over
And
to
they're
Abby's house.
I would have said
He is on
parakeets.
leash
but-
around others if they don't know him yet, because he's a lot of dog.
Dozer will dozer you. Yeah. All right, I got this one. Here we go. Now this is a little bit tricky, so stay with me here.
Okay.
Imagine that there was an actual door you opened to the soul, and that when you opened the actual door, there was an actual physical being shaped like any '80s puppet. What would it be and why?
Oh, it'd be Kermit the Frog. And why? Because I just think Kermit is so super hip and cool. And I like the frogs
Kermit
that we
the
have at the lake.
Frog.
Here.
Yeah.
Kermit.
And that's what he would say when you
Yeah.
open the door to the soul. There's
Kermit.
He
Kermit.
would. He would. And look how nice he is to Miss Piggy and everything. Come on. It'd be
Best.
Kermit for sure.
And he's got the Kermit arms.
He does. So he can give you a big hug. You need
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Perfect answer.
Aw. Okay, you mentioned turning tragedy into opportunity. What tragedy is out there that maybe we would all be familiar with, like something that happened on the public scale that someone has not yet turned into opportunity?
Wow. Okay, so this is just what popped into my head because I haven't thought about it, but I would say we just celebrated September 30th, the first day for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and I would say the finding the children's graves is a significant tragedy for us all. And I think the opportunity is for all of us to learn and grow with our Indigenous friends. I can easily say since those first 215 were discovered, I have been on a learning journey, a personal learning journey, and connecting with Indigenous people all over my community. And I'm finding it so fulfilling, and it has absolutely enhanced my life. And I think we can help each other through this. We can come together as a larger community. So it's a terrible situation that we can turn into a huge act of love, I believe.
The hard hitting questions. And I'm just going to ask you, like, what would you do if you were invisible for 24 hours?
Oh my gosh, I'd probably go into the Blue Bombers locker room. Like,
That
if
is
I'm
the best answer ever.
like, if I'm being honest, am I supposed to be honest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
No,
hope you
yeah,
have.
I would do
I do.
nothing good if I was invisible.
Good. No, I would totally do nothing really good. No,
love it.
just saying.
Great answers. I'm good. I think I'm out of
Yeah,
hard-hitting
I'm out.
questions.
I'm
Yeah.
out.
So
No,
the last hard-hitting question is where can people learn more about you? And we failed to mention that you are a CSP, but not that
yes,
kind of CSP
The other
that
kind.
our
no,
community is.
that's right. I think, in fact, Abby, I think that was the first you made a comment like, "Oh, you're that kind of CSP." I
Yeah,
think,
I
right?
remember now because she screenshot that to us, and we were like, "Oh, okay."
Okay. Yeah. So yes, I am literally a certified professional speaking professional, but professional speaker. So I speak at conferences on all things related to, mental well-being and happiness and positive workplace culture. You can find me at DeriLatimer.com. You can also find me on social media, and everything's just under my name, Deri Latimer. And I would love it if you're on Facebook and you went to my Not Crazy, Just Human page, because we're going to have all sorts of fun giveaways and yummy things coming there as we release the book. So I'd be honored, and I would love to connect with you. This is a passion of mine. It's more than just what I do for a living. It's who I am.
Nice.
That comes through.
Thank you.
A
We
little bit.
see
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
So-
and before we let anything go, I gotta say this to those of you who are listening and not watching this episode. Please go on the YouTube channel where we're playing it so you can see her hair. Like you have to see.
You have to.
You have to
Deri
see
is a
her- oh,
vibe.
Deri has an awesome vibe. It's visually, it pops, and you have to see that. So go check out this video live because there's some
And-
great moments.
And also, no way you're 60. So whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Believe it.
You. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, I'm just gonna take that. I'm going with it.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks everybody for listening. Leave a review.